So, is it picking up? Awesome. This is going to be, can you see my back? I got pictures on my back. This is going to be interesting, to say the least. We're not going to go through a slide deck. I do have some information that I'll hand over in slide-esque things. But it's going to be live. It's going to be participation. I'm going to incite the wrath of the demo gods, because basically this whole thing is going to be a live demo once the computer decides to behave. Basically, we're going to be talking about Python. How many of you right now would consider yourself full-fledged Python developers? Anybody? Sweet. Category of 1. Okay, next question. Huh? Making weird jokes. So, how many of you have written some Python even though you don't consider yourself a developer? We'll call it about half. So that ain't bad. You guys at least have a little bit of an idea of how to use Python. Maybe you've done something beneficial with it. Maybe you just stumbled across something and hacked on it to make it work for you. Don't read the dots. Just kidding. Okay, how many of you, even though I can kind of guess at this point, have never touched Python, barely know what it is, and have some interest in it? We got a couple. This is mostly for you guys, so the rest of you can just fall asleep. Well, it happened last time.
Yeah, it
did. This time I'm giving permission. Did I mention this isn't going to be a slide deck? Okay, so we will get a little bit more in depth with Python, but I'm going to try and cover the basics. That being said, this is not what you're going to find in a Python textbook or in a tutorial where it walks you through every step and you type out the example you find in the book. I've never really enjoyed those kind of books, and so I would not want to force that upon you guys. Instead, we're going to do some live coding. We're going to generally talk about this. If you guys have any questions, no matter how simple or complex you might think them to be, feel free to jump in and get my attention. If you throw something, please try not to hit the laptop or the projector, because they're both not mine. Other than that, this is Python Journey into Mastery. Abstract about it. I've pretty much explained what we're going to do, so you guys don't have to read this. But the hope is that you'll be able to at least have a little bit more of a sense of approachability to Python, possibly use it in day-to-day tasks that you might have. It really is a broad language that can be applied to just about anything. There are languages that are more specific to certain tasks. There are languages that can pretty much can be used for any task, any data manipulation or graphics, creating games, writing a console, writing a dashboard, some little scripts to get some stuff done. Anything and everything is pretty much where Python excels. Let's see, where should we go next? Go to the top of this. First thing I'd like to do is plug this podcast, Talk Python to Me. If you've searched for Python podcasts, you'll find a lot of old podcasts that no longer get updated. And then you'll find this guy, and this podcast is amazing. Actually, it's not at all rude. If you guys need to pull out your phones right now and subscribe to this podcast, I completely understand, because it is a wonderful podcast. It's very high quality, and I thoroughly appreciate that. It's got a lot of good guests. He covers a range of topics from how to use Python to specific projects, specific packages. The podcast that I listened to on the way over here actually was about using Python in the graphics and animation industry for movies, of all things. So I highly, highly recommend this. Can't talk, I can't speak, I really can't speak, but I can't speak highly enough of this guy and the work that he has done. Speaking of which, he has a Kickstarter. And if you are so inclined, he's going to be doing, I think he mentioned actually 20 videos eventually, but they might be split so that you do 2 videos per app. And it's going to be a kind of beginner to intermediate type of course. Definitely worth it, but that's your guys' choice. As you know, Kickstarter is not a supermarket, it's a charity, essentially. So I hope he goes through with it because I have a lot of respect for him. Moving on to some more resources. Automate the Boring Stuff with Python. This is a book from No Starch Press, and actually the author has written several Python books. I can't say that I got a lot from this book, but that's probably because I didn't stumble upon it until recently. If you're beginning Python and you need some real practical examples for how to use it, this book looks like it's got what you need. The whole thing is available online for free. If you want to give the guys some money, you can buy the paper copy. No Starch once in a while has sales and deals that they'll run too, so if you want to try and go for that. And the quality of their ebooks seems to be very good. So definitely recommend that. Automate the Boring Stuff. Another book that's available for free online, How to Think Like a Computer Scientist. Title seems a little wordy there. Computer scientist, how to think like a computer scientist. I don't know if this book lives up to its name, but it's got some really good content in it. Website leaves a little bit to be desired, but hey, content is king, and they do a good job of explaining Python in a different way. Less practical, more theory, more, these are ways that you can use this piece of Python to accomplish this goal rather than practical examples like Automate the Boring Stuff. Still, highly recommend this as a reference. It's very well done. After Hours Programming, Python Overview. This is another one. This is actually a tutorial that you can go through online, and it's broken up into sections. And I can't say that I've walked all the way through the tutorial, but I can say that I've used it for reference material. And in reviewing it, looking over it, it looks very solid. For somebody that's beginning, if you aren't as much of a book learner that's going to study material and then apply it in the real world, if you really want to get your hands dirty and just follow somebody's course, this is a good choice for that. The Python Guru, Beginning Python. This one I'm not as familiar with, but one of my friends that enjoys Python mentioned it, and so I will pass along his recommendation that this is another, if I remember correctly, another good tutorial series. The Python Guru. It's a fun name, too. Learn Python the hard way. If you've heard anybody talk about Python and where to start learning it, you've probably heard about Learn Python the hard way. That's pretty much why it's in here. I don't know that much about it, but a lot of people recommend it, and I'm trying to put together some good resources so that you can pick and choose which one you like the best. This is definitely the majority vote, if you will. Moving on past some resources to something a little bit more hands-on. Python koans. Anybody know what a koan is? Anybody? You know what a koan is. Nathaniel, what is a koan?
A koan is an East Asian proverb that's meant to stump someone. Like, what is the sound of one hand clapping?
I had no idea what it was, so that's awesome. Thank you very much, Nathaniel. Oh, did I mention there's swag if you guys actually participate? Whee! I was trying to avoid you because you were going to snag it. I know you. Excellent. So that's what a koan is. And The only thing that I had for reference with koans is there's Ruby koans, and there's a set of Python koans. There's actually a bunch of different ones. It's a good practical application of trying to understand the language. The way that this works is you download or clone, if you're familiar with Git parlance at all, this repository, and it comes down to you broken, intentionally broken. And so you go through and you fix it step by step. You'll walk through, it'll be all red when you run it, big wall of red, and you'll go through and say, okay, well, let's fix the first broken thing. Oh, well, it's trying to add 1 and 2 and doesn't have an answer, so 1 and 2 is 3. Plug that in, rerun it, you get a green line, and then the rest is red. Go through that process, and it'll help you understand Python and how it works, while also building confidence that you know how to work with real code that comprises these koans. So I do recommend these as an exercise. This set in particular is fairly basic, but that's good for a beginner, so nothing against that. And the guy's name is Greg Malcolm. That's all I know. Code Academy, if you want an actual course, they've got a Python course. Don't know much about this, haven't taken it. Again, it's just referral. I've heard people say good things about Code Academy and in particular their Python course, so I wanted to make sure that it was on here. Awesome Python. Is anybody familiar with the awesome dash references that people have put together for different things? There is an awesome infosec out there, and awesome Python, much like that one, is just a curated list of here are packages, here are modules, resources that are awesome about Python. I actually reference this list a lot. Later on, we'll address something called PyPy in the cheese shop. Oh, I should probably take a detour here. Python. Python, the language Python, is basically heavily referenced from Monty Python. And so you'll see a lot of that in their documentation. And if you don't understand the references, do yourself a favor and just watch the whole series and you'll feel better about life. But Python has a lot of packages pre-made for you. There's a lot built into the language, and that's one of the major benefits of it. But there's also a ton of packages. And if you've come from any other languages, packages can kind of be a dirty word. NuGet still gives me nightmares. That's dealing with .NET stuff, and CPAN with Perl. I really tried to wash the blood off my hands with that one, but it's not quite gone yet. Python packages are not that bad. They're actually wonderful in comparison to some of those others, and they're not something to be scared of. Really easy to install, fairly easy to manage, and the quality, by and large, is a lot higher than some of the other packages that you'll find in other languages. So if you've had bad experience with package managers in the past, please don't carry that over to Python. It'll treat you right. And this awesome Python has an excellent list of some very good packages that when I'm looking for, I need this thing to do X, Y, Z, somebody's probably written that, I'll go to this list. And you can copy down the URL or just search awesome Python, and it's easy to find, even if it's not easy to say. Okay, let's talk about the REPL a little bit. That's a fancy word, REPL. REPL. What is REPL? Well, did I mention we're doing this live? It's not a slide deck.
Oh, wait, you doing it live?
Go easy on me. This is a read, eval, print, loop. No spelling errors, right? Those are simple words. I'm pretty sure I got them right. Well, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Getting rid of it. So, read, eval, print, loop. What does this mean? Why am I talking to you about this weird acronym? Well, this is a powerful feature of Python. You like that? If we just type Python after we install it, and I won't be covering that here because it's fairly easy to get started with installing Python. There are some tricks on Windows. You have to hop through a couple of hoops sometimes with some stuff, but it's already built in on your Mac. Most Linux distros worth their salt these days included as well. Most of the time you'll find Python 2.7 be the stable version. I'm not a big fan of stable, so we're doing Python 3. Yeah, oh yeah. Well, you know, and I'd go to 3.5 except for stuff. So, Python 3. Raisins, actually.
Raisins?
It's a joke. You'll get it later. So, if we just run Python, the thing we download, if you're on Windows, it's an exe. If you're on Mac or on Linux, it's a binary. We run it, Python. We get this gobbledygook. It tells us the version number up here, Python 3.4.4, as he pointed out. It tells us when it was compiled. I don't think that's really relevant, but it's there. It tells us what system it was compiled for and what it was compiled with and the kernel it was compiled. Yeah, I know, you guys don't care about this stuff. Point is, all that information, then we've got this wonderful line, help copyright credits or license for more information, and 3 right angle brackets, because I am a programmer and those are right angle brackets. After that, you'll see a blinking cursor. Yeah, it's showing up there. This is the REPL. Fancy name, weird acronym, long and short of it, this is it. And so I can do stuff on the REPL like 1 + 1. Tell me 2. Well, that's just a fancy calculator. I mean, do we really need fancy calculator? Well, I do, but that's not the point. You can do any Python that you need to do in micro in this REPL. And what it does is it takes what you type in. So we'll do a more complicated version. So, type some stuff in, got some dots up there, we'll explain that in a moment. But what Python is going to do in the REPL is going to read what I've typed, evaluate it with Python, print it, and then loop back to the beginning of that. And so I typed it, hit enter, it breaks. I don't know why, because that's obviously true. And I'm back to my 3 right angle brackets and a flashing cursor. And I can keep going on my way and do any examples or any code that I want to do right here. One of the reasons why this is very beneficial and something that a lot of other languages lack and are worse off for it is the fact that if I'm trying to debug or prototype, I can do it all live right here in the REPL. If I want to get fancy and use files and whatnot, I can do that as well. But this is a very powerful feature that you'll appreciate later on as you start to use Python, especially if you're trying to understand or debug a piece of code. Just a side note, you can hit the up arrow to go back to your lines. So if you are trying to debug a piece of code, then I can go up and do that and get out of it if I want to, all of that fun stuff. I mentioned the 3 dots on the left-hand side. Those 3 dots, anybody have any ideas what they mean? I don't have that many prizes. So it indicates that you are in a nested portion, that this is expecting a piece of code underneath of the statement that you've put above it. Now, we're using an if statement here. And clear the screen, doing it live. See, this guy, I don't spend a lot of time in the REPL. I don't know if that means I'm too good for it or just that I don't know what's good for me. So the three dots, if we have an if statement, we already mentioned that. If we have a for statement, we will mention that as well and get into a little bit of what they are and how we use them. A while statement, not a white, a while statement. If I'm trying to define a function, any of this stuff are independent, isolated pieces of code and expect a nested portion beneath them. This is a good point to address something else that's unique about Python. Not only does it have a REPL, but it is also sensitive to whitespace, or whitespace sensitive. And I'm sure there's other ways to say that as well. But I've just kind of embraced it and absolutely love it because it makes code a lot cleaner. If you've coded in other languages, Visual Basic, just because a lot of people have coded in it, you've got an if and an end if. Bash, if, fee. I don't know why it does that, but that's there. If you've got C or C++, you've got curly bracket hell to live through. And Python and its benevolent leader, I can't say his name properly, so I won't try, had decided that they didn't want any of that. They just want white space. So you'll find that the examples in Python are a lot cleaner. And if we want to do an if statement, we just indent on the next line. I follow the standard of spaces. Some people subscribe to tabs. I will not judge them, but you cannot force me. Fair enough. I'd expect that from your kind. Somebody shouted out Emacs earlier, too. So, no Emacs here. Nano for the win. Oh, hey! This is a good time to talk about editors. We're talking about writing Python, right? And we can use the REPL. That's good, great, and wonderful. But you probably don't want to do that for long-term projects. There are ways to hack around the limitations of the REPL and extract out what you've put into it. They're not good ways, and I will tell you not to do them. You should dutifully ignore me at a point that you'll realize later on in your programming or scripting or playing with Python career. But at this point in time, don't try and get stuff out of the REPL. Don't expect to ever save anything that you've put in the REPL, especially anything more than you can just copy and paste. So what are you going to write it in? Well, you could use Emacs if you're a sadist, or you could use Vim, likewise if you're a sadist, or you could use Nano. You could. I know someone, if you're writing Python, never mind. I know someone that I might or might not work for that writes all his code in Nano, so Nano is a perfectly acceptable choice. However, I do not do that. I use something called Atom. Is anybody familiar with GitHub's Atom? This guy. Anybody familiar with Sublime Text? Ah, you should all move over to Atom. It's much nicer over here. There's actually a lot of these kind of editors. Text Wrangler is one that some people use on the Mac, which is fine. Whatever you can easily program in, that's always my advice, is use what's accessible to you. If you want to do it at the command line and you want to use Nano or Vim or Emacs or any of that stuff, whatever is going to get the job done, whatever's easiest for you and provides the lowest friction is what you should choose. For me, that's Atom. There's a lot of reasons for that, and I won't get in depth on it here, but one of the reasons is syntax highlighting. And so if I decide to go back to my previous example, that's because it's not capitalized. There you go. How do you feel about them apples? So if I go back to my previous example, you'll notice that, like on the REPL, it's in a shade of gray. Actually, I can't claim that's white with a black background. But with Atom, I can set the syntax highlighting to be Python, and now it's a little bit easier to see. And it's not so bad when you've got 2 lines, but when you've got files and files or pages and pages or hundreds of lines, it's a lot easier to pick stuff out and have your brain decode things if you use syntax highlighting. And don't throw your phone. So I'm just going to do this because I feel like it, and then I'm going to explain why. So let's save this. We'll call it ac.py. Yay! Oh, this brings up another point. If you spend any time working on Python and you decide to work with other people, then you're going to get into some more religious wars, like the tabs and spaces. These wars will be largely around things like formatting, variable names, all really boring stuff that nobody should really be fighting about because there's obviously a right way to do it, and that's the way that I do it. So I don't know why anybody spends it. But if you want to try and pull back and maintain a little bit of sanity and get everybody on the same page and come up with some standards for this kind of stuff, tools like pylint are very helpful. A lot of packages in Python are prefixed with py or suffixed with py. Not a majority, but many of them. Pylint happens to be one of them. It's a program that you can run against your Python code to check syntax and errors and stuff. If I want to drive it crazy, I can do something like that, and it'll tell me I've got a syntax error because I am not in Python 2 land. I'm in Python 3 land. If you don't know what I'm talking about, down at the bottom here, in the red, syntax error, missing parentheses, in call to print, line 4, column 1, and it'll even go to it for me. That is Pylint. You'll notice I'm not running it from the command line. I'm running it from Atom. Another good reason to have a good editor. Can Emacs do that? No, I don't think it can. So, this is our first little Python file. Name it with a Python extension, .py. I called it AC. It's a horrible name. I really shouldn't have done that, but I'll learn from my mistakes someday, I swear. And we've got a little bit of code in it. We'll break down what this code is just to get some reference points. But the long and short of it is I can, and yes, I know I can run in the REPL, but we're not going to. I know Nathaniel was going to tell me that. Yay! It's a pretty impressive program, huh? No?
Anything I've ever written.
Well, okay, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. It's not really practical, but we'll break it down real quick just to kind of get an idea of where we're at. The first 2 lines are just some variables. Variables are boxes we store stuff in. Charles and awesome. They have the values of true. This really isn't a useful example, but it's illustrating a point, so just bear with me. So we've got Charles. It's a variable. It's a box. We put true in that box. We've got awesome. It's a variable as well. Different variable, but a variable. And we put true in that box. That's what the equal sign means. Single equal sign in this place means we're going to put that value in that box. Then we're going to compare the 2 boxes. Actually, I can even take this out and make another variable and store the value in that. And since we're working on this, I would never actually do this in real life, I promise, but the screen size and the font size means we'll do it that way. We've got is Charles awesome. Variable name is Charles awesome. Store the value of the things in the parentheses. The things in the parentheses is a comparison. Does the Charles box contain the same value as the awesome box? That's what this double equals means. And parentheses, we're using them to basically allow multi-line. Otherwise, it would want you to have this all on one line, but as I mentioned, because of this projector setup and whatnot and having the font size so big, it would just cut it off. So that's why we're using parentheses. Don't worry about it too much. we can then use that value here. And that'll bring us up to speed to our if statement. Our if statement is going to look at this variable, or the expression that we had there before, Charles equals awesome. And if it is true, it's going to run the block underneath of it. In order to illustrate this, I can actually write the FOIL of that. And so we've got a truthful block, if you will, and a false block, or a truthy block and a falsy block. Whatever you want to call it. This isn't an academic class. Sorry if you were expecting that from me. This if statement has this else statement as part of it. They're both indented at the same level. In this case, not indented. They both have colons at the end. Yeah, fancy. And I will address that in a moment, I promise. And these print statements are at a different level. They're nested underneath. So this print statement belongs to this if statement, and this print statement belongs to this else statement. As was pointed out, you'll notice that I am ending these lines with a colon. And that is just part of the syntax of Python. When you have some kind of a definition or a loop, there's a better word for this, but again, not academic, you always end it in a colon. Which will bring us up to functions. After a while, this code isn't too bad, right? You can deal with 4 lines there, but eventually you'll get into functions, and this is just where you put bits of stuff that you want to call multiple times, possibly with multiple parameters. And we might or might not get into that depending on time, but in the same way that we end the if statement with the colon, we end the definition of this function with a colon. So that's just common to Python. I actually can't think of any other languages that do that, that use colons to delineate the end of a declaration. But none of that really matters anyways. Let's do something a little bit more practical. Tell you what, let's get you guys a programming job. No? Nobody? Well, okay. If you were to go for an interview for a programming job, you'd probably end up at one point or another facing FizzBuzz. FizzBuzz is a pretty simple problem. Huh?
Or like what you have.
Huh? I can't quite hear you. And I definitely know you're not getting any of this swag. Man, dude, why do you gotta be such a downer? So, FizzBuzz. FizzBuzz is a litmus test. If you go for a programming job, a lot of times you'll be presented with this as a, can you actually program? You say you know Python. Do you really know Python? And they'll give you a pen and a paper. Yes, those still exist. And they will ask you to write out how to program FizzBuzz. FizzBuzz has these rules. It's kind of like a children's game. Very simple set of rules, but it ends up in a complex result. Kind of like that time where we played red light, green light, and somebody ended up with their head cracked open on the asphalt. Complicated. It's complicated. No idea how that happened. What?
I thought that was a crazy work day.
So, FizzBuzz. We are going to write a program that prints the numbers from 1 to 100. Everybody got that?
Yes.
1 to 100. I know, it's kind of dry, but we're having fun. It's Python. That's what I'm going to keep telling myself. But for multiples of 3, print fizz instead of the number. And for multiples of 5, print buzz Well, 15 is both a multiple of 3 and 5, so you would print FizzBuzz. Thanks for walking into that one. So this is a pretty simple example. It's not entirely practical, but the practicality in it is that it's a simple litmus test to make sure you understand some basic concepts. We will go ahead and do FizzBuzz real quick. We'll see how this goes. Demo gods, please don't scorn me now. So let's see. 1 to 100. Well, let's start out with this. We obviously are going to want something that's going to loop over the numbers, and as it gets to a number, do something with it, right? And so in Python, as well as many other languages, that's a for loop. Get the pretty blue. The for loop needs to have a box to store stuff in. What's that called? Box to store stuff in. It's got a real name. Too many people shouting out again. Good job, variable. Tupperware. This is not that kind of party, lady. Anybody want to name our variable? Shoebox. I heard shoebox first. Sorry. For shoebox. That's a horrible name. In. You're very focused on boxes. Are you like, do you work for a packing company? Or? So Python has this awesome construct called range. Range is just a fancy little built-in thing that allows us to go 1, 101. Really? Nobody say anything? Huh? Exactly. I really thought somebody would call me on that. So we're going to go from 1 to 100, right? Everybody following along? If you're not, snore real loud. Good? Okay. Oh, I lost you. I'm so sorry. You're one person, though. You know, needs of the many. What are you going to do? So we're going to take a look at this. We're going to say if shoebox. That really is a horrible name. What was it? Multiples of 3? Nope, 1, 0. So, oh, I just did some fancy stuff there. What's this thing? He's right. He can't say it right, but he's right. He knows what he's talking about. Mod. You know, Python, I don't think it supports mod anymore, not with 3. I think it did in 2, but for now we're just going to use %sign. What this thing does, it's special fancy computer programmerness. I don't know why they came up with it, but it's been done this way forever. Ask this guy named Richie. And the modulus operator takes shoebox, divides it by 3, in this case. Any number that you would put after it, it would divide it by. And it returns the remainder. Well, if the number is evenly divisible by 3, otherwise known as being a multiple of 3, then it's going to have a remainder of 0. If I wanted to make that a little bit clearer, I could isolate some things in our fancy parentheses. Whoops. Fancy parentheses that we use, right? So shoebox mod 3, take that value, compare it to 0. If it's 0, then we want to Fizz. Yay! Okay. So the next thing is pretty similar, right? We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. What is this madness? Switch statements. You're just confusing people now, making up shit. Ah, no. We do not want that, even though it is possible. And what he's talking about is ELIF, which is just basically else if, right? But we got to have it shorthand because that's too much to type. You can use this to say if this, sorry, grab the wrong thing. If this is false, but this is true, then do this. The reason that we don't want this here is the last rule for numbers which are both multiples of 3 and 5, print fizz buzz. Otherwise, yes. And it's a good construct to know about. So we'll take that away for the moment.
You can do an extra else if at the very beginning. Check if it's both. And then if it's not, if both you don't get true, you can fall through to the other choices.
I'm not following him. Okay. So, if I got paid by the line of code, not that kind of job, particularly not right here. So, we've got our if fizz and if buzz. But we've also got a hole in our logic, right? Because one other thing that we need to do is print the number. In this case, we'll get back to this in a moment, so just trust me on it. We're going to go about printing the number. Got to do it this way. Like this. We want to print the number, right? But if we look at our rules, we only print the number if fizz or buzz is not true, if it's not a multiple of 3 or 5. So, I don't even know where I'm at. There I am. You know what? I'm going to save this file. Fizz buzz. So, anybody have any suggestions? Any ideas? No? Okay. Well, I'll just do it anyways then. So, we've just been printing this out, right? And that's a very valid suggestion, but you got too late. I said I was going to do it my way. So, we've just been printing this out. We don't actually have to do that. We could create, what's another variable name? No, he said donkey. No, it's too long. Shun? No. Oh, whoa. We'll go with donkey. Okay, donkey. We're going to store an empty string in it. I promise I'm going somewhere relevant with this. So we're going to start out with donkey having an empty string. We are going to use this fancy operator that says take this empty string and add to it fizz. Okay? Plus equals. Seems fancy. It's really not. You'll get used to it. Plus equals. Okay, so now we've got donkey. If it's a multiple of 3, we've got fizz. If it's a multiple of 5, we've got buzz. If, any guesses? Nope. Okay, if it is empty, then we're going to go ahead and store the number in it. And then we'll print it all out at the end. Print the donkey. Another fancy thing about Atom, you can select multiple words, and this is actually something that is awesome. Sublime Text does it too. I know. But you can select all of these, so if you had to do something like rename it, yeah, no, totally not doing that. So if you had to do something like rename it, you could. We'll go ahead and give this a shot. Doing it live.
For the, are you going to explain the print statement? Why?
Absolutely. The string formatting? Yep, absolutely. I want to see if this works, though. Hey, it looks like it works. I have no good way to determine whether this is actually working, but we'll look at 15, since that happens to be somebody's favorite number tonight. And it looks accurate for 15, so we'll go with it. And 10, there's 10. 9, no, there's 10. Yeah.
So fizz replaces the number?
Yes, fizz or buzz or both replaces the number. And so this is kind of one of the twists of the problem and why it's an interesting litmus test. Developers, if anybody's ever worked with them, you may find that quite a few of them have very high attention to detail. There's a much less nicer word.
Anal.
And this test is, I wasn't going to say it. I'm not going to touch your pants either. So, because of this, this is a good litmus test to check whether or not you're paying attention. Did you actually read thoroughly the rules of the game and follow them accurately or not? And that's a lot of what full-fledged programmers have to do. They have to take a certain set of rules, sometimes not even rules, some gobbledygook that management has gone, here, do, and break them down into rules, and then implement those rules, and attention to detail along that path saves their sanity. Absolutely. Absolutely. He doesn't want to hear me talk anymore. He wants to see the code. I am going to do this, which is not part of this talk, but is helpful to know if I can type, just to get rid of that stuff down at the bottom. Okay. Yeah, I'm, in case you were wondering, I am throwing convention to the wind. That's what that thing is. Did you have a specific question or just wanted to look at it? Okay. Oh, are you following along? That makes me feel really good. Why aren't you following along? You have a phone.
I was doing other things on my phone.
Okay, so for this code, as was pointed out, and as I mentioned I would talk about later, we have this fancy thing down here. Now, we've talked about percent being the modulus operator. Python, being the fancy language that it is, doesn't use this for only one thing. When you're dealing with numbers, technically integers, but we'll call them numbers in this case. If you're dealing with numbers, then the modulus operator gives us the remainder, right? That's what we're leveraging for this if statement. If you're dealing with strings, like fizz and buzz, the things in the quotes, then you can use the modulus operator in an entirely different way. And this is another one of those niceties of Python. Okay there? Okay. Okay. The way in which you can use it is to format strings. And so actually, if I wanted to get really complicated with it, I could build something a lot fancier, like say I want to left justify my numbers when I run this. Go ahead and run it again, and we will pipe it into less because I don't have Emacs installed, and I wouldn't know how to escape from it if I did. I know how to escape from VI, though.
It's the only thing you need to know.
Colon WQ. Colon WQ. Really? Colon WQ? Who thought of this? So yes, exclamation point to ignore any changes, but I don't make any changes because I'm too scared. Anyways, so in this case, we are right aligning the numbers at 3. Now you might not be able to see that well, so let's go ahead and increase that a little bit. Let's say instead we'll do the sum of 30. Oh, well, okay, whatever, we'll do it live. There you go, 30. The numbers are over there now, right? So this fancy little language that you should look up if you really want to utilize it allows you to do all kinds of wacky stuff with strings. Sure.
What if you want to left justify all the words?
Well, then you can do the same thing. Let's do. Yeah, this is programming. There are 50 good ways to do that. Parenthesis. Yep. So if I'm on a line by itself, by the way, this is exactly what I'm talking about, this being like a live thing and whatnot. Feel free, any of this stuff, anything's fair game, any questions you have. So if I open the parenthesis, I'm just typing shift and the parenthesis, it puts a pair. That's not where the real power is. What you've probably seen me do a couple of times is type some really weird string, select the whole thing, and then put a parenthesis, and it puts the matching one at the end. And that is actually really nice because I will forget parentheses a lot. Or, it's true, or if I want to do something like this, where I had come up with this complex piece of logic, and I wanted to break it into parts, I can very easily select parts of it and then put the parentheses around it so that I can better understand this complex thing.
Does Python use the old like printf style for the string formatting, or does it get its own
I would say that it inherits from the printf style of formatting. It does have some extra stuff tacked on. And so it's not pure, but if you use that style and you know that style, it'll pretty much always work right off the bat. And then if you want a little bit extra, you can do some other weird stuff with it. There's actually, so this is one way to do it. Python 3 added another way to do it, which is good in different situations. It's kind of a judgment call, and actually, I should get rid of those because you don't actually need them. It's a judgment call as to whether or not you want to do it this way or the other way. So you can do it that way as well. And if you've come from any of the .NET languages, huh? Yeah, it's an extension on the string class. And so you're calling the format method and passing in different variables. And you can do a whole bunch here. You know, whatever. You can talk all you want, I don't care. So, where were we? Well, we pretty much had solved this problem, right? So this isn't too fancy. We've got a for loop. We've got some if statements, right? 3 separate ones. As was pointed out previously, why is it yelling at me? Oh, because I didn't finish these off. These conversations that I have with myself, yeah, that's what it's like to work with me. Why? You stupid computer. You wanted to do this, right? Did you say 30 or did you want it to be more? She's not even paying attention to me.
No, I was going to tweet what I was going to say because I didn't want to say it out loud.
Just a minute. I got it. Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Just wait until they...
Okay. So.
I'm paying attention, I promise.
Yep. That's another nicety of Atom. So I have my first cursor, and then if on a Mac you hold Command, on a Windows machine, I believe it's Control, you can click and have as many cursors as you want. There's also the trick that I mentioned before, which if you select a string and do Command D or Control D on Windows, you can select all instances of that string, and that actually gives you multiple cursors as well. Is it flashing?
You never seen her?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I think we're pretty much done with FizzBuzz. I don't think there's anything more to do with that. How long is yours? Okay, we're going to keep going until somebody stops me then. Does anybody have any ideas for little pieces of code they want to write, or any questions that I can illustrate with code?
Instead of doing a
Yes.
for loop with if statements and variables, could you build a list and a memory over the list?
Absolutely. You could do a dictionary if you really want to, but it'd most likely be a list. This is actually a good, This is actually a good time to go over the differences. So there's dict and there's list, right? And there are other ways to type these as well. Python has these items. And if you've ever worked with any other languages, you might have worked with sets or arrays, or there's a bunch of different names for these. But to illustrate the difference, these are both collections of things, right? So instead of a single box, like with our shoebox, we had a single box to put a variable in. If you have a collection of variables, you can put them in a list or a dictionary. There's one difference between the two. In a list, it would go something like this: A, B, C, okay? In a dictionary, it would be a little bit more complex. So we'll do and we'll do some pretty formatting just to make it actually fit on the screen. Hey, I'm doing this live. No. No. I'm a programmer, sir. We have to make all the variable names the same length so it lines up real pretty like that. See if I did. Look, it's crooked. What are you doing? So 1, 2, 3, right? Okay, so difference, right? We've got A, B, C. These are just items in a list. Apples, oranges, bananas. Doesn't matter. A, B, C is easier to type. In a dictionary, we can assign them names. And so 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C. That's the only difference. They're really just labels on them. They're really just labels in order for you to easier manipulate them. If you wanted to work with the list, and say you wanted to replace B, right? The way that we would replace B in the list is to, well, we'd have to assign it to a variable, so A, B, C's, right? And we'd have to use the index of it. And since this is 0-based, this would be 0, this would be 1, this would be 2. We'd have to go 1 equals D. I'm really creative. You guys learned that with my previous presentations. Right? And so we could do that until we decided to insert something else into the list, and then B wouldn't be in the right spot anymore. So maybe we did...
So really you don't put that value variable for our description.
I
Sorry. The update the that'll affect the entire code set?
that will replace B. So I'll make it a little bit clearer as I go here. For now, we're going to say insert 1E, okay? And so we start out with A, B, C, D. Actually, haha, this is a good time for the REPL. Told you guys that thing was going to come in handy someday. So we've got ABCS, which A is not defined because I should make these like strings just for fun. Okay, so there we go. If we ask it to print out ABCS, we've got our ABCs, right? If we want to replace B with D, then we can do ABCS index 1 equals D. And now if we print that out again, we've got D in place of C, or in place of B. Maybe I should have picked better names. So we'll change it back. So we've got our ABCs in order again. And now this is what I was commenting on with this next line. We're going to take that, ABCS, insert 1E. Now we've got AEBC, really weird ordering, right? But if we go and tell it to replace B again by index with D, we replace E instead. So we can't reference that value. We have to always keep track of where we're at in the list. Basically, yeah. There are nuances that make it better than an array, but for these purposes, it's pretty much an array. In working with dictionaries, we don't use the index. We don't use this number here, right? That number there or that number there, both of those numbers. We don't use those. I'm going to do, oh, no, it's because, you know what? We're going to ignore everything. Ha! I don't care what you say, Pylint. I'm doing it live. So instead of using the numbers, 1 in those places, we can use the name of it. And so if we go down here and we want to do the same kind of thing. So we want to do ABCS1 equals E. That will allow us, no matter where in the list 1 is, no matter what order it is, so I could go up here and I could go like this and swap it down to the bottom. And it'll complain about my formatting because commas, yay. Even though it's now last in the list, I'm still going to accurately replace it. And so something that Justin brought up as an example would be a ping sweep. In that instance, you could use something like the IP address or the host name as the key to allow you to store the information. And so let's say, for instance, we want to do 2 ping sweeps. We wanted to do a basic one, and then we wanted to go back later on and resolve, say, the host name. First one, we just get all the addresses. We put those in one big dictionary. So again, real creative, because yay. We have to line these up because I'm a programmer, just saying. We've got our IP addresses. We want to go back in later on, add in the host names. We can reference the IP address and say, okay, this is actually host 1, this is host 2, et cetera, et cetera. So, how are we doing? That is a good question. Okay. Let's see. We were talking about a ping sweep. So we've got a couple of things that we have to get into. I'm going to start out by mentioning that it's been brought to my attention that my text is too big.
No, we didn't know.
No?
It should be larger. It should be
all caps.
like I want to see one
It can never
letter
be too big.
per.
No colors.
No color. Bad chance. Okay, ping sweep. A pint sweep. Yeah, we're back to the bar. Ping sweep. Okay, so this will probably not be functional because I'm doing it live and infuriating the demo gods. However, we're going to go through the basic path of what is a ping sweep going to look like. And so first thing that we want to do for this script is get some user input, right? Maybe we want to do a cider notation or something. To make it easy, right now it's going to be a ping sweep of 1, but we'll build up to multiples. So we want to have a variable. We'll say address equals raw input. Please enter an address. Yeah, isn't it though? Ping sweep. So Python. Yay, broken stuff. Raw input is not defined. That's because we're in Python 3, not 2, where we can just do input. Let's see if I'm right. Yay, okay. Didn't do anything. I was just making sure you guys were paying attention. I did store it, actually. I've got an ADR. But why not?
Can you have an option other than agree to the terms of service?
I could. You do realize there's a time limit here. Like we're not doing this for the next 3 days, right?
Get to the meat.
He's people. Are you sure you want to scan this address? So look, we stored a string, we got a string back. Awesome. Okay, well, that'll allow us to get some input into the system. Then we need something a little bit more complicated. We're going to actually call ping, right? And so the first thing we're going to need to do that is do this fancy thing that I haven't talked about yet. Import subprocess. Anybody ever import anti-gravity? No? Do that if you get bored in Python. And if you don't want to use Python, then look up XKCD. And if you don't know what XKCD is, I feel very sad for you and will be happy to inundate you with images for the rest of your time. Nobody wants that? Okay, so import subprocess. Subprocess is a package. Now, we're going to play a little bit fast and loose with some of the terminology here because there are magic words like package and module. And for the purposes of this demo, they don't largely matter. The long and short of it is we are going to use this other thing that we'll call a package in order to leverage its functionality. So it knows how to call processes, right? Subprocess. Makes sense. We're going to use it to call something else, to call ping. We're going to subprocess out to the process of ping. All that fanciness really means that I need to be able to do something like this and call ping. I really want that beer. So, if you don't get that joke, you weren't paying attention to my typing. I take no offense. So, we're going to open ping, right? P open, in fact, subprocess P open. And it says it doesn't have that member, but I don't know if I believe it. Let's see. Anybody use Jedi? Nope, not going to work. Okay. Doing it live, demo gods. Sure, we could do nmap. Why do you want nmap instead of ping? What do you got against ping? Why are you ping hating? No response? Okay. You can, but I believe that all of that was migrated over into the subprocess module for Python 3. I know, right? Well, it's really easy because you just delete 3 characters and then it works, right? So we're going to do this fancy thing. Huh?
Except in this case.
We're going to do this fancy thing where we search Python 3 for subprocess. Oh, of course not. Come on, connect, connect, connect.
Did you try and turn it off and back on again?
I could, but I'm not going to. Re-image. Re-image, he says. Oh, come on. You know it's there.
You can pop on the guest account.
I can pop on the guest. Is it legit?
It actually is.
Okay. Oh, there it is. See, it's got it. Maybe. We'll see. Whoa. Beer. Again, we need beer. Okay, there we go. Whee! Try again.
I have a list of t-shirts that I'm making. That could be one of them.
I'd buy it. The t-shirt.
Thank you for specifying.
I just wanted to be specific. Hey, we got all kinds of stuff. So we've got subprocess.run. Oh, another good point. Documentation. Documentation is your friend. I'm actually going to switch this version because we're on 3.4. This is the Python documentation. It's at docs.python.org. They're as creative as I am. You will find yourself using this a lot.
Continue.
You're going to let me in on that joke later.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you will find a lot of good examples here. If there is a specific code file for it, Python is all open source, and so it'll even have the code file. Unfortunately, in this case, it does not. It's probably later on. Here it's talking about popen, which is what I was trying to do. We don't want this one. We want that one. Subprocess check output. So, subprocess check output. Gotta love the crazy large text. Here's another trick. From subprocess, we are just going to import this specific method, right? Before we were importing the whole thing. We're getting this whole big thing. It's got a whole bunch of pieces that you can see in the documentation. Look, see how that's a real long list there. No, seriously, this is actually one of the larger classes. That is a long list. So there's all kinds of stuff that it has that's part of it. However, we really only need this check output method. We're going to use that to call ping. So in this case, it takes a list of args. We'll go ahead and name that. The first one is ping. Let's see. Ha! I even have color on my man pages. Deal. What are we going to call ping with? No, seriously, isn't that sweet? Love it. Infuriating the Emacs user. Anyways, what are we going to call ping with? This was your suggestion for a ping sweep. Are there specific options that you would like us to call ping with, or are we just going to ping a specific host?
Well, I was suggesting that we could do a sweep between a subnet and
Okay.
once we're up or down.
Okay, sounds good. So let's see, sweep max size, sweep min size, all kinds of fun stuff in here. Audible, should we make it ring the bell? If you're talking to her about a ringing bell, it's a whole different thing.
True story.
Just warning you. Well, for now, we're just going to do a normal ping. I am not going to do that. It's only ping. Actually, what I should do is... Huh? Yeah, we... Oh, I'm not on Debian. Let's see. This is one of the drawbacks of Macs. They have 15 million Ethernet interfaces. Oh well, we'll just pick a random address. It'll be fun. What's the worst that could happen? Maybe we'll ping Google's DNS servers. That'd be fun. So ping, and we're going to pass it the address, right? And we can go ahead and get rid of all of these probably. Assign the output to a variable. Print the output. Yay, really exciting. So this is still one IP address. We'll go over that one. 8.8.8.8. Yeah, why not? And it's waiting for ping to complete. I have no idea what this is going to do. I haven't actually tried it. Might do nothing. Huh? Ah, good point. Well, good news. We can interrupt it. Control C. Another thing that you'll really want to get used to. I had completely forgotten about that. I've spent way too much time on Windows lately. Okay, so continuous ping. So no, there's no colors on this one. How do we turn off? Count, taxi. So let's do a count. Well, we'll just put an arbitrary count in here for now of 3. Sounds good. This is actually all part of the call for ping. What we're doing is... So what you're doing here, the check output method takes in a list of the pieces that you're going to pass, right? And so on something like Nix-based OSs, that's going to mean spaces, right? If it's got a space, then it's technically a separate argument on the command line. And so this is actually delineating that with a list saying, okay, these are the separate pieces of the argument. If you were on something like Windows, it's even more finicky, like spaces matter sometimes. And of course, in both instances, you can escape them with backslashes. All of that is resolved by the fact that we're going to use a list of arguments rather than concatenating them into one string and doing something like this. That's what you were talking about, right? Yeah. So that's they're getting around things. This is probably not the reason for this, but their cross-platform abilities do end up in some odd behaviors within the language, and very beneficial ones. Like you'll be dealing with it and fighting with it and going, why is this working this way? This is the stupidest way to call it ever. Did I mention I swear at my computer as a monologue daily? So you'll fight with all that, and then someday you'll realize, oh, that's because on, what did you say, HP AIX or whatever, some weird system. There's a reason that it needed it to be this way, and they accommodate that. And so that's another good reason to choose Python as your language for scripts to get things done, day-to-day usage, is that it does accommodate all platforms. I can write this code, and obviously for Windows, the ping program is going to be called different. I have to deal with that. But other than that, the rest of the lines on this page will work just the same on Windows as they will in others. In fact, you can actually do... Hey, talk like a pirate. We'll just do it in empty. That is how you would deal with the differences between Windows and Nix OSs. You could get a little bit more fancy and like start your argument list up here, and then we used our neat operator before to do that, and so you could actually do something fancy like that, and then at the end add the address on at the end, and that way you could specify in between for specific platforms which flags you want to use. But for now, we'll just do the normal. Okay, so we've got all this fanciness.
Yeah, you can't ping out.
You can't ping out normally, so your script's not going to
Unless you jump on your hotspot.
I'm on my
Oh,
hotspot.
you are.
Oh, sorry.
He can't ping out.
Well, that's all right. You've got me as the crash dummy to see if it works. Hey, look at that. It's got some weirdness with new lines because encoding is hard, but we got the output from the command. In fact, if we want to do a little bit better, then we could actually decode it, replace. There we go. And so that's our output. It's as if we ran the command ourselves from the command line. Obviously, that's not that beneficial. We've just basically wrapped something fancy around ping sweep, or around ping to do a ping sweep. But now we can do the actual sweep. So this is going to get more interesting.
8. Do a /8, it's smaller.
YOLO.
Did you just say do a /8 it's smaller? I'm going to have to do a talk on bit masks now. Bloody hell. Okay, so please enter a range. Once again, let's consult some docs and say we want to look for a Python module that deals with CIDR. If you don't know what CIDR is, you haven't dealt with networking enough, and that's probably a good thing. So this is the thing I was talking about before. Oh, I did one of those fancy gestures. This is the thing I was talking about before. Python has a package index called PyPy. You'll notice it's the first part of this URL, which, there you go, PyPy, P-Y-P-I. This is where you're going to go to search for packages. People have already done a lot of the heavy lifting for you. If you need to do something like write a command line application that has different methods it calls and whatnot, then you want a PyPy package called click. If you want to do something like colored output, you want something called Colorama. Yes, they have very creative names, unlike my stuff. If you want colored logs, well, it's called colored logs. What are you going to do? Point is, there's a ton of packages on PyPy. In this case, there's something called NetAddr, net address. that is a network address manipulation for Python. If you're getting into something complicated that you think might be a problem that someone else has already solved, go searching on PyPy. Or maybe just do a Google search and look for the links that are on PyPy. You can find it. The one thing to be cautious about, down at the bottom here, you'll notice its compatibility. It is compatible with Python 2 and 3. Awesome! There's still a lot that aren't, so watch out for that. There's some that are still 2 only. Most likely that means you don't want to use those. Just kidding. You can use those. But if you ever want to have future support, you can't rely on them ending up being ported to 3. And actually, at this point in time, right now, the majority, if not the vast majority, have been ported to Python 3. So you should be good to go. Just make sure you check that. A lot of times the code that they have on here is hosted on GitHub, like this one. And so absolutely, you can do something that's called a pull request, fix their code and merge it in. There are websites that track packages that have not been ported to 3 yet. And so you can actually go on that website, find ones that haven't been ported, do the work yourself, and then submit them to a pull request. Not to mention, this is the wild, wild west of open source on the internet. So if they decide your pull request is not to their liking for whatever reason, maybe because they're snooty assholes, then you can just spin up your own version, name it something creative, and submit it to PyPy. It's actually a fairly straightforward process, not too painful. So how are we going to get this? Well, we've got this fancy thing called pip. Python Integrated Package Manager. I think that's what it stands for. Nathaniel's not here to tell me.
Isn't there a couple of them that do that other than pip? Or some of the other ones that do the package installer?
Not anymore. That's the short answer. There were others and more, but it's all pretty much been consolidated down to pip in Python 3. Is that what it was called? Cool. Whee! Hey, there we go. What's wrong?
It's way cooler than Ampkit.
That's a discussion to have after some beers. So now we've got netadder. Let's go ahead and import netadder. Right? Oh, but how are we going to use this thing? Well, there's a couple of different ways that we can figure that out. We can go back to the REPL. And we can use this fancy C. It'll probably yell at me because I haven't imported it. Oh, come on. C is another package that is fighting with me for whatever reason. But that's all right. There's plenty of other ways to skin this cat. We can do dir, D-I-R. This gives us all kinds of information about it. You'll notice a whole list here that's fairly unintelligible, so we'll make it a little bit better. Ignore that semicolon. Yes, it works. We don't talk about them. Really? Nobody laughed at that? Okay. No C programmers here that want to speak up. I see how it is. There we go. That's a little bit prettier, right? Let's see. We've got valid stuff. We got max stuff. We've got smallest matching CIDR. We've got spanning CIDR. We got all kinds of stuff here. Glob to CIDR. CIDR to glob. All matching CIDRs. I'm probably saying that wrong, by the way, but nobody's corrected me yet, so to me it's CIDR. CIDR. Tuple, tuple.
It's pronounced
CIDR. Okay. Well, I ain't got that kind of time. So we're going to go straight to the documentation. Otherwise, I play around with it and figure it out. And we're also going to fire up a Google search, because this is the way that programming is done. And we're going to look up netadder. Yeah, oh yeah. CIDR min max. See if that gets us anything. That is not Google. Well, what can I say? My default for Firefox is set different. I'm sorry. Doesn't look like that got us anything, so we'll go here. Possibly tutorial 3. We'll see. See here, there's your. You want to do it again? I think it'd be fun. What is that on the video? You don't want to know, dude. I believe it. I think you might have gotten me over my head here. This is going to be tough to figure out. If anybody sees the answer, obviously feel free to shout it out. Oh, you want to cheat. Okay, we can do that. Do we?
Yeah, minus 20 minutes ago.
Hey, whatever. Nobody's kicked me out yet. Okay, so we'll do this. We'll do this. Good call. So we're going to stay within a /24. So please enter the first 3 octets of an IP address. So we'll get rid of this print message because it's silly. We'll then go ahead and do for I in range 0 to 256.
Scanning that range, and that range is part of a bigger subnet. Those could be valid. No, that's correct. But for this, I thought you said it was going to /54.
And you're only thinking, so it's not going to count.
All likely.
You make us stop 55? I'll make sure to never do that again. Good. Oh, Lord, there's some shit going on. Pretty sure we have a sponsor.
Okay, so this is going to be a lot of dead space because. What's wrong? Oh, you mean way easier than decoding the cider notation? Dude, I wouldn't be a programmer if I went for way easier. I have to make it as complicated as possible. Okay, so you want to do Pygame next? There are. No, there are. I don't understand. Anyways, so we're doing from subprocess import check output. We are getting the first 3 octets of an IP address in as a string. We're not doing any error checking, so somebody could horribly break this. This is the way security holes happen. We are then going to do this fancy thing here. We haven't seen this before. I'm going to have to shrink this down so that I can get it on screen. This fancy thing here in between these square brackets is called a list generator. It's called a generator. And basically, we're taking this range, right? We're doing a for statement over it and encapsulating the number we're on in I. So I will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to 255. It's totally your fault. I don't know why. And we're going to format that with the first 3, and then period, and then that. Actually, I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this just for fun. This is one way to do it. We'll take that out. You can also do this. Syntax might be wrong, so we'll see. You can also do this, where you're just going to join them with a full stop, otherwise known as period. So either method works. That one's a little bit shorter. Then we are going to take that new list that we got for address in address list. We're going to set up our ping arguments. We're going to call ping and encapsulate the output. And then we're going to print the output, all fancy like. Basic ping sweeper. This is probably not going to work, just so we're aware. But, you know, we'll have fun with it. Yay, broken things. So I need to, this is where that atom trick comes in. I need to enclose that in a list as well. Nope, not the last dot. Okay, I know what else we need to do. We also need to turn this into a string. It's just that easy. This is not JavaScript. It will not automatically turn it into a string. We have to tell it this is a string so that it can combine it with this other string with this string. This is a way that that would be superior, or there's a third way to do this because programming, yay. There we go. We're scanning our ranges. And it'll come back eventually, but now I realize that a good thing to do would be to put a header on here. Print %. What should we do? Hey, called process error. So basically, ping failed, returned non-zero exit status 2. We can get a little bit more complex now and get into error handling. Yay. I'm excited, aren't you? I don't know what you said. I'm sure it was very witty, sir. Actually, we want to do...
What all platforms is Adam on?
all of them. Or everything. All of them. And it's pretty epic. Okay, it doesn't like that. So we'll do... Forgot how to left justify, but that's all right. We'll just do the cheap method. 1, 2, 3, 5. 6, there we go. No? You guys don't think that's a good way? I think it'll work great. There we go. Nice little banner. Look at those equal signs.
No nasty art.
Give me time. Sheesh.
In one line.
Yeah.
Can you randomize each one to be a different color?
Yes.
I do like colors.
I do like colors. I like colors. Okay, so obviously it's failing every time, right? We don't have a message saying that. We could create a message saying that. But that is a basic ping sweeper. And if that is not a compelling argument for you guys to start working with Python tomorrow and find something useful in your everyday lives to either automate or make easier or just have fun playing with, I don't know what is. I think I'll end the talk here. First 3 people to say me get swag.
Me. Charles. So
I heard one over there.
my hand was up.
That's fine. You two fight over it. No, you got to fight him for it. And I heard one over here. There's somebody. Whoever's greediest gets it. I don't care. Oh, Renee gets it. Nope, she's greediest.